Thomas Green here with the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. On the call today, we have Jake Morgan. Hello, Jake.
Hello,
and
Thomas.
We have a special guest by the name of Cody Butler. Welcome, Cody.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
It's good to have you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I would describe myself as a teenage life coach. I help teenagers develop unshakable confidence, self-esteem, motivation, self-worth, really all of the issues that are going to stop them from achieving their greatest potential. And I really help them develop those skills to where they are actually, in fact, able to unlock their greatest potential and literally have, be, or do anything that they choose in life. I hopefully open their mind to the possibility that they have a world of possibilities out there that's available to them that they don't realize they have access to right now.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I have two teenage daughters, so yeah, I think we can probably touch upon a few of those things.
Yeah. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
I mean, typically, what I thought about in regards to what you do and what the site is all about is kind of like a problem. You're solving a problem for people.
Yeah.
So what would you say the problem is in regards to the concept of what you're offering, teen success?
So teenagers have got it really tough. I mean, teenagers have always had it tough, right? It's very difficult transitioning from a child to an adult. It's never been easy at any point in history, I'm sure, but it's super difficult these days. I mean, teenagers, I really do feel for them. They've been dealt a very crappy hand of cards, and it's very easy for people that, I won't include you in people that are our age, but people that are, I'm a bit older probably, so I won't include you in that. You're probably a bit younger than me, but it's very easy to look at a younger generation and just go, kids don't know how good they've got it these days, or this and that, or it's like, but it's like, we've got to remember they've been dealt a very difficult hand of cards to play. And so some of the big challenges that I face is really, look, at the end of the day, let me start with this statement, and this can be kind of the preface for everything, really. It's like, I would say if your child is happy or your children are happy, you have succeeded as an adult. Or as a parent, rather. If your children are happy, I would surmise that you have succeeded as a parent. That's my goal as a parent, and I assume that's a lot of people's goal, is to see their children happy. Like, we obviously want them to do well and have great relationships and make a lot of money and have careers and all that kind of stuff as well. But ultimately, if they're happy, we've done a great job. And a lot of the challenges that are given to a teenager today that rob them of that, right? They rob them of great relationships. It robs them of having a great future. It robs them of understanding money, finances. It robs them of having a spiritual life, and it robs them of developing as a human being. It is mobile devices. It's YouTube. It's instant gratification. It's all of that stuff. And you can't really hold a teenager responsible for neglecting every aspect of life when you give them a device that's entirely addictive. It's like giving a 5-year-old, getting them hooked on cigarettes or getting them hooked on alcohol, right? You can't say, well, you made some bad decisions, now you got to pay the consequences. It's like, hey, it's like these kids have been given some tools and some things to them that are highly addictive, highly stimulating, very difficult to compete with in the real world. And ultimately, like drugs, like alcohol, like negative behavior, promise everything in the beginning, deliver absolutely nothing in the end, and in fact, rob you of everything. So it's really one of the main things is helping teenagers understand that they can have more in life, right? It's getting them to focus on what they actually really want. It's like, they don't want to be on the mobile devices. They don't want to be on the phones. They don't want to be on social media. They're doing it because there's no better alternative, right? They're doing it because there's nothing else that they can do that's going to appeal. So once you can get a teenager in touch with the bigger picture and say, hey, look, have you thought about this? What do you actually want to do with your life? What would you like to be? Where would you like to go? What would you like to have? What would you like to achieve? And get them start setting some goals to move towards those things. That these are the things that are going to produce happiness, right? Contribution, fulfillment, like all of these things. It's like, if you're not contributing, ultimately you're not going to be happy. If you're not serving other people, ultimately you're not going to be happy. But all of these things that are really absolutely critical to the happiness of anybody, really, and that those devices are stealing, and getting them to set goals in these areas and showing them that they can have these things and that the device is actually harmful. It's actually holding them back, and it's stopping them actually being the things that they want to be. And we see that, you know, the kids that really overcome these devices, for example, someone says, hey, I want to be a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and they're really serious about it. It's like they understand that these devices and these distractions and these, whatever we want to call them, tools that have been given to our kids today, is going to stop them from achieving their greatest potential. It's going to stop them from achieving their greatest goals. So you see people that, you know, they want elite sporting careers. They want to be pilots in the Air Force. They want to be, you know, they want to be top class professional musicians. It's really easy for them to move away from these devices, and really easy for them to get into the areas and start focusing on the areas that are going to produce happiness, is going to produce fulfillment, going to produce contribution, and really make them contributing members of society, basically.
So, wow, you've touched upon so many things there, but I mean, the primary thing that I take away from that is devices bad, and the truth is that I think even during the lockdown, where they were homeschooling on those very devices, which typically they turn to for their, I guess, and even more so now, they turn to these same devices even more than they ever have for social interaction with their friends, because they were denied the possibility to actually go and see their friends. So I think I certainly have noticed that it's got worse, if you like, since the lockdown started. But the other, I totally get on board with those points that you made about, you know, having direction, having something that you want to achieve, happiness coming from giving and you know, serving society in some way as well, not just taking, but you actually have to contribute in some way. But both of my daughters seem to be completely confused about which direction they want to take their life in terms of career, for example. The things that you typically would like to focus on, and sort of, if you have that goal, I want to be a fighter pilot, then that gives you a pathway, and you can follow that pathway. And I completely get what you're saying, but neither of my daughters seem to know what it is that they want to do. So I don't know if you've got any advice or anything about that.
Yeah, and that's perfectly okay as well. So the thing that you've got to be very careful with here is that you don't push them in a direction, right? So I work with a lot of parents, and they'll say, like, I have my child's best interest at heart. I have it, and it's like, well, you know, I talk to the child, and it's like, they're saying, well, you know, I want you to get really good grades in school, is what the parent is saying. It's like the child's going, yeah, you want me to get really good grades because it makes you look good. You want, you know, it's like, you want me to behave because it makes you look good, or because it makes you look bad. It's like, kids are, you know, very, very clever, man. I mean, I've got young children, and I'm often amazed by how some of the stuff my 3-year-old says, for example, just blows me away. It's like how just because they can't articulate what's going on does not mean they're not understanding what's going on, right? And I think a lot of times, as long as what we're doing is clearly in the interest of your daughters, as long as it's clearly in the interest of your daughters, they're going to respond to it. So, you know, in that situation, it's like the goals there really, like, you know, when I work with teens, for example, it's like, I don't know exactly what I want to do. It's like, well, that's great. But if that's the case, do you want to be closing doors? Do you want to be ruling stuff out? It's like, because if you're not good at math, that's going to rule out some career paths. If you're not good at English, that's going to rule out some career paths. If you're not good at, you know, social studies, that's going to rule out some career paths, right? So it's like, it's having an honest conversation and say, hey, look, I'm really happy for you to do whatever you want to do. And I'm really happy for you to go in any direction that you want to go in. And it's perfectly fine that you don't know what that direction is right now. But let's look at the bigger picture here. It's like, can we say that you don't want to go and be a chiropractor? Can we say for sure that you don't want to be a doctor? Can we say for sure that you don't want to be an English teacher? Because if we can't, then we don't want to be closing doors at this point. And sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, it's reframing that whole thing. So giving it to them in a context that they can understand. Yeah. Okay.
Well, a lot of it too is like, look, I was educated. I did my primary and secondary education in the UK, and then I went to the university in the US. And the only way I was able to get into university in the US is because they didn't understand the education system, and I was able to literally talk my way in. I was in secondary school in England, or high school as it would be anywhere else in the world. I was extraordinarily average at best. Extraordinarily average. It's like I failed a lot of subjects, and it's like there was no possibility. This was 30 years ago now, so this was when it was not equal opportunity. It was like that the brainy kids got streamed off to university, that the not so smart kids or the more disruptive kids went off into trade schools and did apprenticeships. It wasn't like equal opportunity for all. So there was no way I was going to university. That was not an option. That was simply not an option. But I was able to, it's a long story, maybe we'll cover it another day, but I was able to get into a university in the US and I excelled. I did very well. And it wasn't that the education system was inferior in the US and superior in the UK. It was a different environment. And it's like, I came to that environment and different expectations were put upon me. And I was treated differently. And it was kind of like at that point, I'm like, I kind of get it now. It's like, I'm not dumb. I'm not stupid. I was just not put in an environment. It's like, I'm teaching my children agriculture. I'm teaching them how to grow stuff. I just think it's a great skill to have, whether they need it or not. And it's like, if you plant a seed that has to be planted in the springtime and you plant it in autumn, it's not going to grow. There's nothing wrong with the seed. There's nothing wrong with the soil. You just put the wrong seed in, you put the right seed in the right soil at the wrong time. And it's kind of like that. People kind of look at, they go, oh, this child's doesn't have the aptitude for. And it's like, well, I think as educators, like myself, I consider myself an educator. It's like, if a child fails, we have to take the responsibility. It's like, that child, that's my responsibility as an educator. The fault is mine. And I always viewed it that way. The way I started working with teenagers really was, giving guitar lessons, to be honest. And that's a long story as well, but it's like, I never blamed the child for failure. I never blamed the child. If they weren't doing something, I didn't say this kid is not musical, or this kid doesn't have a good ear, or this kid has just not got the dexterity that's required to do this. I'd say, I'm failing this child as a teacher. I'm failing this child as an educator. I'm either, I've taken a perfectly good seed and I've planted it in the wrong soil. I've taken a perfectly good seed and I've planted it at the wrong time of the year. And how can I approach this from a different angle? How can I come at this from a different angle? Because in years and years and years and years of working with children now and teenagers, it's like, I've never come across a teenager that is completely incapable of doing it. Look, there might be some people out there. It's like walking, right? It's like, how many children have the ability to walk? All of them. How many children have the ability to talk? All of them. How many have the ability to learn to swim? All of them. Look, and there might be some that have some disability or some mental functioning that's not working properly, and the odd one here or there, there's going to be an outlier here or there. But generally speaking, it's like, all children have the ability to achieve all things if they're given the right nurturing.
Totally agree with what you're saying. I also had the same follow-up as you, Jake. So basically, immediately what I was going to say was, the typical answer that you get is like, I don't really know what I want to do. And one of the things that I'd heard around that topic, because it also applies to adults, it's not just teens.
Of course.
So they're like, yeah, I'm not really too sure. But one of the things I've heard is that, like, if you don't know what you want to do, the only way of knowing is by trying lots of different things. So if you had a teen, or you were working with a teen, and they said to you that I'm interested in having a goal, like I want to do well in life, I don't want to spend all my time on a smartphone. How do I know what I want to do? Have you got any thoughts or strategies on that?
Yeah, so everything ultimately leads to a feeling, right? Everything leads to a feeling. That's what, in anything that we do, we're trying to achieve a feeling. If as adults we go into a dating relationship with another consenting adult, it's because we want to feel a certain way. If we're pursuing money, if we're pursuing finances, it's because we want that money to make us feel a certain way, whether that's, security, whether it's power, something like that. The relationship, we want to feel connection. We want to feel something like that. When children play out or play up, it's because they want to feel a certain way. So it's maybe they want to feel significant. So when a child plays out in a classroom in a negative way, it's a very easy way for them to get significance very quickly. A child can take a pen and throw it at the teacher across the room and they instantaneously become significant, right? It's a very, very easy way to get significance. So the question is, like, you've got to look at what is the behavior leading to? What feeling is it leading to, right? So when we understand that everything is a feeling and everything leads to a feeling, if your teenager doesn't know what they want, then the next best question, and actually a really good place to start, is to ask the question, what feelings do you want to experience? Even as an adult, like, what emotions do you want to experience this week, Thomas? And what emotions do you not want to experience this week? Have you thought about that? And it's like, if you go, well, I don't want to experience this and this and this, fine. Well, that's going to eliminate some behaviors that you're going to not engage in. And if you say, I really want to experience this, this, and this, then that's going to produce some behaviors that you probably might not have engaged in, right?
Working back from the goal, isn't it?
Yeah. And why does a 15-year-old say, I want to be a doctor? They have no interest in being a doctor, right? They have no interest in being a doctor because they want the significance of the position. They want to impress a parent, or a parent has probably made their love conditional, right? Very probably made their love conditional on them achieving those goals. No teenager has thought it through and thought, okay, well, I want to make massive contributions to the world, and I want to change this, and I want to change that, and I want to accomplish this, and I want to accomplish that, and I want to. It's like they see that being a doctor produces a certain feeling, and that feeling might be significance, it might be worthiness, it might be approval, it might be love, it might be something like that, right? So if as the parent we go, I don't really care what you want to do, what you do, that's secondary. We'll look at that in a moment. The first thing I really want to know, Thomas, is what do you want to experience this week? What do you want to feel this week? What experiences do you want to have this week? And then you go, okay, well, I really want to feel like I'm worthwhile, that I'm justifying the CO, that the oxygen that I'm believing, and I want to feel like I have a purpose on this earth. It's like, fantastic. What are some things we can do to make you feel like you contributed? Maybe we can go down to the Salvation Army. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do that. And it's like the tasks then just become a logical secondary part of the equation to the outcome, right? So if I just say, what do you want to do this week, Thomas? And you go, I want to run my business. Okay. Well, why do you want to run your business? Because I want some money. Great. Okay. Well, let's run your business and let's make you some money. Fine. Awesome. So at the end of the week, you've got a bunch of headaches, you've got a bunch of stress, you've got a bunch of stuff going on. It's like you've run your business and you've made some money, but you're stressed out. You're drinking too much. You're being short with the kids. You're not having a great time with your wife, because to get the money in the business, it's like you've completely stressed yourself out. And it's like, well, what were you really going for? It's like, well, I was going for security. It's like, okay, well, is there a healthier way we could have got security? Is there a healthier way we could have done that would have got you to that end goal without all of that stress? And you still have to do those tasks, of course, but it's like they would not be so important. And when things start to go a little bit wrong, you wouldn't get so stressed out. Does that make sense? So it's a case of starting with the end feeling in mind and working back from there. Now, okay, your two daughters, what would you like to experience in a job? What would you like to experience? Freedom. Okay. Financial, this kind of finances. I'd like to, this kind of contribution. What would you like to achieve in life from humanitarian perspective, whatever, all 15, 16, 17-year-olds are more than capable of having these conversations. They're more than capable of having these conversations. What's your spiritual aspirations? What would you like to accomplish spiritually? What would you like to see in the house? What goals do you have for our family? What goals do you have for you and me? The 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds are more than capable of having these conversations and seeing some very, very incredible answers, but those questions never get asked. The teen never gets asked those questions. They just, it's just like, get off that device. You're wasting your life. It's like, for what? What am I going to do if I get off the device? Go sit in the garden. We're not even allowed outside right now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Total sense. Yeah. I do that myself with things. I work backwards from what is it that I want to achieve, but I've strangely hadn't kind of considered that same thing for my daughters, because from a parental point of view, you're kind of looking back again. I've been through this phase. I've made these mistakes. I wish I'd have done that differently. All of these kind of questions, all of these kind of statements going on in my head. And you just kind of want to impart all that knowledge to your children, but of course they kind of have to learn it themselves. So I completely get on board with what you're saying. What is it that they really want? Well, they don't really know. They don't know the world. They don't know what it means. Who knows what the careers and, you know, how things are going to change. I mean, we've seen the world change hugely over the last 12 months.
Right.
Who knows what it's going to be like in 10 years' time.
That's right.
So it's a sort of a daunting task. But when you put it in terms of what it is, how do you want to feel? I've really never considered that before. I've got to hold my hands up. I've never considered that.
And most people haven't, and that's the reason there's an epidemic right now. Because like we just don't, you know, look at our children as, you know, functioning intellectual entities, and children need security. It's like why do divorces have such negative effects on kids? Because it's like it's threatening love, it's threatening security, it's threatening these feelings, right? It's what it's doing. A child needs to feel secure. Why do children act out in negative ways and behave badly? Because they need significance. They need to feel like they're being noticed. It's like very young children are more than capable of thinking about this stuff and articulating what it is that they need. And if you can take your teenage daughters, for example, that maybe you can't get off the devices or you're struggling to get off the devices, it's like, well, what are you getting? You know, what are you getting out of that? What are you getting out of those devices? Well, you know, it's connection. I'm getting connected. And it's like, okay, so connection is what you want. Well, then as an adult, it's like they don't understand that there's 50 other ways they can get connected and that's healthy, right? Or they go, it's like a 2-year-old and a bowl of chips. That's all it is. It's like, I'm hungry and this is good. They don't go, oh, well, like, you know, I could satisfy my hunger in a much healthier way with carrots, or, you know, a 2-year-old will just as happily eat carrots as long as you've never given them chips. Right? So a teenager just goes, I need connection and this is giving it to me. I need significance and this is giving it to me. It's like they're going 2 plus 2, 2 plus 2 equals 4, 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's like, no. It's like, you want connection, and the easiest and the only way, or the instantly gratifiable way of you getting it is to go into those devices. So if as the adult, the parent, you can sit down or you can ascertain and go, well, what is it that you're getting out of this? What is it that you're getting out of this? And let's just go with connection. It's like, you know, I feel connected. It connects me. And it's like, okay, well, that's true. I'm not going to argue. I'll give you that it does make you feel connected, but it's an artificial connection, isn't it? You know, you and I are probably feeling a little bit connected right now, but it's like, would you feel more connected if you were sat next to me in the room? If we genuinely want to have a relationship and be connected, are there better ways that we can connect? That they're going to give us, you know, I hate buzzwords, but like more authentic connection, or deeper connection, or better quality connection, or healthier connection? It's like, of course there are. And you and I, as fully functioning adults, can come up with those. But a teenager just goes, I'm hungry, bowl of chips.
Yeah.
Tastes good, satisfies my hunger. Why would she go any further? Why would they go any further? And then the parent goes, you know, my child. It's like, well, hang on a second. Let's look at you as the parent for a second. It's like, your child is saying that they're hungry. You're putting no food in front of them and you're leaving a bowl of chips on the table. And now you're complaining and saying that your child is failing because they're eating food that you've left on the table when they say they're hungry. It's like, you as the parent have got to take some responsibility in this situation, right? Well, not you as the parent, but the parent. And then I would surmise that once you understand that, let's say it's connection that your daughters are getting from the devices, it's like, then as the parent, it becomes your option, your obligation and opportunity to present them other ways to connect.
Some of this, I mean, I love the information, so thank you for sharing it. Some of the words make me think of, so like, for example, significance and connection makes me think of the 6 human needs. Have you got a Tony Robbins influence at all, or is that just a coincidence?
Well, I've got a book up there, Awaken the Giants. I mean, yeah, anybody in this space, like, of course, if you didn't study Tony Robbins, you'd be negligent, right? You'd be negligent. It's like you'd have to question somebody's seriousness. It's like, so you're in the self-help, personal development self-improvement space and you don't know who Tony Robbins is? Okay. But I'm not a Tony Robbins sycophant or anything like that. I mean, I don't agree with everything that he says for sure, but definitely there's certainly large portions of his work are certainly agreeable and
yeah, well, I mean, it all makes
helpful.
sense, doesn't it? And I love the I love the working back from the feelings, because it's about what makes them feel a particular way rather than pushing them in a particular direction. I love that. And I wanted to pick up on something in your profile. So say that you've worked with over 2,000 teenagers, featured on Fox, ABC, and NBC. And the teenagers, working with that many teenagers, I wanted to ask you about what kind of work that you do there. And then also the featured on the various channels. How did that go and how did it come about?
Yeah, so where should we start there? A lot of questions. So let's start with featured. So yeah, so actually I've got another Fox appearance coming up here, April 29th, actually, I'm very excited about. But listen, it's a biblical phrase, right? You have not because you ask not. You have not because you ask not. If you want to be featured on major media, have you asked, is the question. That's the question I ask everybody. So how do I get this? How do I do that? Have you asked? It does wonders. It's an amazing things. It's an amazing thing, right, to ask, so that's the first thing, is to reach out. So if you're doing stuff that's like, if you're contributing, right, if you're making a contribution, then what you're doing is newsworthy for sure. And pretty much all media outlets are starving for content. So the news, for example, they have to put together a 60-minute show or a 30-minute show every day. So they're always looking for newsworthy content. They're always looking for good content and stuff like that. So a great place to start is just to ask, just to start putting yourself out there and, start just reaching out. I reached out to you guys, right? And said, hey, this is what I do and this is what I talk about. And I think it might be a good fit. If you think it's a good fit, get in touch. And here we are, right? It's like, had I not asked, then this probably would not have happened. So a good lesson we teach the teens as well is you have not because you ask not. Don't complain that you don't have something unless you ask for it. And asking generally takes the form of goal setting, right? So asking for something is we teach that in the terms of setting goals. So you want a great relationship with your parents, well, let's set a goal to have a great relationship with parents and define that, what it looks like. You want to get media exposure, have you set a goal to get media exposure? How much media exposure? What kind? Local, national, international, all that kind of stuff. So does that answer that question?
I think so, yeah. How was the process for you, and are you happy with it? And how did it go?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's like anything, right? It's like the first time you do something, it's awkward and it's difficult. And really, the big thing that I teach, the number one thing is, like I say, we said at the beginning, what do you do, Cody? Tell us what you do. I teach teenagers how to have unshakable confidence. Well, what is going to allow you to do these things? Because everybody deals with fear. Everybody deals with anxiety. Everybody deals with stress when facing new situations, right? And the thing that stops people achieving these goals, let's say, is that they don't have the confidence to act before they feel ready. So accomplishment comes from doing. You're never going to feel accomplished, or you're never going to feel ready before you do something. So you get the opportunity. So like some of my earlier stuff was like doing radio interviews and stuff like that. And I'd reach out to radio stations and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you have any interest? And they'd say, yeah, come on, sounds great. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to. I didn't think you'd say yes. I didn't think you'd invite me on the show. And so, you're really nervous and you're really terrified, but you do it, and then you go, okay, actually that wasn't so bad. And then you do it again, you go, actually that's pretty good. And then again you go, oh, actually that's quite enjoyable, I'm not too bad at this. And then after a while you start to feel accomplished, and you start to feel like you know what you're doing. But all of that comes from literally having the confidence to have a go. Confidence is everything. Confidence is so much more valuable than money, Because if you have confidence, you can create all the money in the world. But if you don't have confidence, you've got very little. You're not going to achieve very much. You're not going to get your perfect relationship. You're not going to get your perfect job. You're not going to get your perfect house. You're not going to get your perfect. You're not going to have your perfect anything. Because
how do you install? Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just what you say makes complete sense. In my life, it's been the same. You have to push if you're feeling very safe and comfortable, you're never growing. So you're never pushing your boundaries. So therefore, you're staying exactly where you were. So how do you install this confidence in teenagers? Because my kids at least seem pretty confident as children, and then something changes and they kind of they lose that self-confidence.
Yeah. So confidence, it's a great question. So confidence comes from the successful setting and achievement of goals. So if you set a goal and you fail, then you're going to have a lack of confidence, right? You're going to go, oh, I don't know if I can do this. If you set a goal and you achieve it, then it's a stepping stone. So if you wherever you are, whenever we work with a teenager, like wherever they are, the goal is to get them to the next level. So if they're a 1 out of 10, our goal is to take them to 2 out of 10. If they're a 7 out of 10, our goal is to take them to an 8 out of 10. It's like to take someone that's a 1 out of 10 and say, okay, right, you're going to be a 6 out of 10 by the end of the week. You're just setting up failure and you're just setting them up to damage their confidence, right? So what we do specifically is we have teens, we have the teenagers set goals in 7 areas of life. So, career, school, social, extracurricular, spiritual, family, these areas. And it's like social, I said social, didn't I? But we have them set the goals and then we work with them. And it's like, okay, so what is the next logical step? So you guys are in England, right? So you can drive from London to Glasgow with 20 meters of light at night. That's all you need. You only need 20 meters of light to drive from London to Glasgow. That's it. Most people think, you only need to know this much of your journey, and it's a very short amount. So it's like, I'll give you a real life example from this week. Actually, I had a coaching session with a kid, and he said, my goal is to have a better relationship with my mother and father, but it's so screwed up. I don't even know how that's even going to be healed. It's so damaged. I don't even know where we would start. And I said, okay, look, here's your goal for this week. When we hang up, get off this call, go to your parents and just say, I appreciate you booking some time with Cody. That's it. That's it. Walk away. Don't expect a response. Don't wait for a response. Just get off the phone. Don't think about it. Just go straight to your parents and say, hey, I appreciate you booking some time for me with Cody. I appreciate it. And walk away. And I'm like, watch what happens. I'm like, your parents are going to respond in a way because they feel the same way about you. You got to understand when two people are like this, the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here. The distance you are from your teen is the same distance your teen is from you, right? It's a set distance and it's solid. Your teen, so if you feel hopeless, your parents do too, and vice versa. So it's setting those tiny little micro goals that human being can come back next week and say, look, I did that and the results were pretty phenomenal. I was really surprised, really helped. I'm like, okay, so we've taken the first step, right? The first 20 meters of our 1,000-mile journey have been driven. So what can we do? What's our next step? What can we do? What can we do this week? Well, how about when you get off the call today, you go and say, just give me one thing I can do, Mum, to make your life easier this week. Just something easy I can do to make your life easier. That's it. And whatever she tells you, whatever your dad tells you, do it. Just do it and see what happens. So that's like baby step, baby step, baby step, baby step. Before you know it, you're in Leeds, and then you're in, the Scottish border, and then it's like, that's how you do it. And it's like, it gives hope and it gives a clear path. So without hopelessness, a path without hope is a waste of time. So I can give someone a clear path and they say there's no hope. I can give you a clear path. It's like we know the path to the top of Everest, right? It's been taken many times now. We can probably Google it, but it doesn't mean you have any hope of getting to the top. Just because you know the path doesn't mean you're going to get to the top. You have to have the hope to go along with it. So small micro goals that are achievable to where the mind can go, I can do this. And then that gives them the confidence to tackle a little bit bigger goal. I can do this. And then maybe 4 or 5 weeks from now, we can get to the point to where you can sit down and say, look, things are clearly not working here. What can we do to fix this? And have a real conversation. Does that make sense? So it's getting very clear about the outcome and then giving micro steps that are achievable, because those micro steps are going to build confidence. And, you know, the confidence is like a muscle, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, I have to try and make sure that I don't. I'm trying to stay focused in the frame of teens here, and rather than like applying these principles to myself, because like they're powerful.
Well, they work for everybody. Yeah,
Stuff.
they're universal. They're universal.
So to follow up on a previous question, you give a great answer, but I feel like we got a little bit of what you do in terms of like one-to-one. I want to say either counseling or coaching. So is that the way that you work with teens, like one-to-one? What would you call it?
Yeah. So look, so I would say I prefer coaching, because, like, you know, top athletes have coaches, right? Movie stars have coaches. Top singers have vocal coaches. So a coach takes somebody from average to great, whereas counseling kind of carries some connotation with it, where it's like, it's almost like there's something wrong with you. It's like you're in counseling, you've been naughty, or so the way I look at it is like, there's nothing wrong with the kids that come to us for that. The first thing I tell you is there's nothing wrong with you. Let me just talk to you now. And one of my clients, for example, is one of my grown-up clients is a two-time world championship boxer. He's got two world title belts. And I'm like, he hires coaches, and he's a world champion twice. Why is he a world champion twice? Because he has coaches, right? So everybody at the top has a coach. So that I prefer the coaching label, if we have to label it, just because it's taking good and making it great versus taking something that's broken and fixing it. So yeah, the way we work is structurally. So there's really two kind of components to what we do. So we have a membership video type program that the students go through. So every week they get a series of videos with homeworks. And then at the end of the week, they meet with a coach who really just makes sure that everything's been being done properly. So, for example, the one of the homeworks might be set some goals as to how would you like your relationship with your family to be. That might be the goal, right? So the teenager will do that, but they'll do that at quite a superficial level usually. They'll come up with, not always is the case. Sometimes they'll do a really great job, but usually it's kind of like quite superficial. So we want them to come up with like 5 or 6 goals in each area of life. And then in the one-to-one coaching sessions, it's like, okay, well, you've given me 6 goals here in your family life. Let's prioritize these 1 to 5, 1 to 6, whatever it is. Now we've got the top 3. Let's put 3 or 4 micro steps in place that we can take this week. And, usually we can handle sort of 2 or 3 areas of life on a weekly basis. So we want to maximize the one-to-one time, because that's limited, right? It's like we have a finite amount of resources. So we don't want to be spending time doing stuff that they could be doing by themselves. We want to be spending the time one-to-one to really go, okay, you say you want a better relationship with your mother. Let's put 3 steps in place that you can take this week that you're going to achieve. And that's our general working process.
And were you going to add something, Jake?
No, I was just going to ask how long does this sort of process typically last? I guess it varies, right?
Yeah, so we'll see radical transformation in 8 weeks. We'll see radical transformation in 8 weeks, because we really, the first thing we say, like, get with the teenager, get with the 15-year-old, say, it's like, hey, look, this is just between me and you, unless you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, which you're not, right? You're not going to do that, right? If you are, I'm going to have to tell your parents. But outside of that, this is about you, and it's like, it's about you having what you want. I tell the kids, I say, hey, look, think of me as a genie, the genie in the bottle, right? You rub it and you get 3 wishes. It's like, that's what this is. I know that you can have, be, or do anything you want. I know that you have unlimited potential. I know there's opportunities available to you that has not even entered into your consciousness yet. It's the world that's that's doing everything in their power to stop that, because they want you to go work for the corporation, or they want you to go into the army. They want you to be cannon fodder, or they want you to go make bullets for the cannons. That's the only 2 options really that the world wants for you. and everything is geared towards that, right? It's like, it doesn't benefit anybody at all for you to know that you have unlimited potential. You know, anytime something's free, you have to ask the question, why? Why is education free? Because somebody's paying for it, and the person that's paying for it is benefiting from it, right? It's like, well, the purpose of education is to prepare you for the corporation, or is to prepare you for the army, or to prepare you for your servitude for the government. Is to prepare you to fit into a role that somebody else has determined that they need you to fill. They don't want you knowing that you can have, be, or do anything. They don't want you knowing that you can achieve anything, be anything, go anywhere. They don't want you knowing that. That's what I'm here for, is to A, to tell you, and to B, to show you that that's true. So I don't want them thinking, I'm like, don't think of me as a coach or a counselor or anything like that. It's like, think of me as the genie. And if I was genuinely your genie, what do you want? Tell me what you want. Yeah, because if you think, like, if we look at, let's look at an age group in the population where there's zero anxiety, zero stress, zero depression, you know, all of these things. What is the age group that, or the only age group really that this happens in? And it's sort of the sub 5-year-olds.
I was going to say, is there one?
Yeah, it's like
you're totally right.
2-year-olds, 3-year-olds do not have depression. They do not have stress. They do not have anxiety, right? Yeah, they have little blow-ups and stuff like that, but generally they might be unhappy because you turn the TV off or whatever. It's like, they're not depressed. They're not going into a state of depression. You know, they might be sad for it. They're not, you know, there's zero depression in that demographic. So if there's zero depression in that demographic, would it help us to look at that demographic and see, well, what's going on in this group, that there's zero depression, zero stress, zero anxiety? Well, let's look at that. What are some commonalities in that age group? It's like, they still think they can have, be, or do anything they want. They believe that they can achieve anything that they want. They're not putting limitations on themselves. You know, my oldest is 5, and like every day now, I tell him, EJ, you can achieve anything you set your mind to. You can be anything you want. On the way to school, on the school run, we repeat it. EJ, what can you achieve if you set your mind to it? Anything, Dad. What can you be, EJ? I can be anything I want, Dad. Because at the age of sort of 4 and 5, that starts to get slapped out of them a little bit. You know, if we look at
when they first go to school.
yeah. And where do we see anxiety and stress starting to come in? You know, it's at those early school years, right? We'll start to see some problems, but not necessarily major problems, generally speaking, but we'll start to see some psychological issues developing now at those ages, 5, 6, 7. Now we're starting to see some problems develop. Well, why is it? Because they're being limited. They're being restricted. They're being restricted in their thinking.
Is that partly because they, in the house, they may have siblings, but they feel the love from their parents, generally speaking? I mean, obviously there are some families where that's unfortunately not the case, but generally speaking, they feel this sort of unconditional love and affection, and the focus is on them. And then they go to a classroom where they're just one of 20 other kids or so, or 30 even these days.
There's an argument to be made for that. I mean, that's certainly a plausible hypothesis, right? Can't poo-poo that idea and say that's rubbish. But I would say, like, personally, I would say it's because it doesn't matter what the home life is like for a 2-year-old. That child's mind cannot be restricted.
Okay.
That child's mind can't be limited. That child's imagination cannot be limited. That child can be horribly abused and neglected, but the imagination cannot be limited. Whereas sort of at the age of 5, you start to see that decision, like conscious decision, overrides subconscious desire. You start to hear, I can't do that, or you know, that sort of language, like, you're not really going to hear that too much. Like a 2-year-old, regardless of the environment that they're in, is going to have a very active imagination. It's going to be a very unrestricted imagination, a very uncensored imagination. Whereas a 5-year-old, there's starting to be some censorship of that imagination.
Would you mind going into what the common scenarios are that you typically have teens come to you? Like, what are the reasons why you start working with a teen?
Yeah, so there's a wide variety. So school refusal is very common. People that have been bullied is very common. Addicted to social media, devices, stuff like that. Withdrawal from the family. You know, a lot of parents will come to us and just say, hey, one of the first question we asked for is like, what does success look like? Because we say we've got 100% success rate. It's like, well, how do you define that? It's like, well, we ask you what success looks like. And then we success is not getting, when I say, well, success is getting to the end of an 8-week program and giving a certificate of completion. It's like, it's unique. Like, we've got 3 people here that are parents. And it's like, if you asked the 3 of us, what does success look like? We would all give 3 different definitions, right? If you and I work together, what would success look like? If you and I work together, what would success look like? Like, if you worked with me, what would success for me look like? It's going to be very different for different people. So the first question is like, what does success look like for you? What would be a great result? Let's fast forward 12 months. What would have to have happened for you to be recommending this to all your friends? And sometimes it's as simple as like, I just want a better relationship with my child. I want them to be my friend. I want them to do better in school. They're not motivated. Sometimes it's much more serious. They're going down a very dark path of, very negative behavior, alcohol, drugs, stuff like that. It could be like underperforming at school, underperforming in sport, difficulty coming out of a bullying situation. It's a very wide ranging set of things that we work with, but ultimately it comes down to it's happiness, right? It's like people want their children to be happier. People want their children to be happy. So it's like, hey, our promise is your child will be happier at the end of this.
Yeah, I guess that's a pretty universal goal, isn't it? Really, to be happy.
Well, if it's not, I'm not really for taking kids out of homes for the most part. But if you don't want to see your kid happy, I'd have to really question whether you should be a parent or not.
Yeah.
You also mentioned at the beginning, you mentioned about devices. So when you work with a teen, I mean, I get the concept of working back from the feelings and the goals, and I think that's great, and micro goals in order to achieve the macro goals. What do you say and what do you encourage regarding devices? Because presumably the default is, a child is spending lots of time on a device. What do you encourage there?
Yeah, so look, devices in and of themselves are not bad, right? So we're on a device right now, and it's like we're having, an enjoyable adult conversation, right? And it's like I'm enjoying having this conversation with you. It's like, and we're on a device. So, and hopefully some people will benefit from this, from you uploading this to a device and them accessing it from their device, right? So, like, devices are not bad. It's like anything else, though. I mean, I don't stop my children from eating McDonald's, but I certainly regulate it. I don't stop them from drinking Coca-Cola or eating ice cream, but I certainly regulate it. I don't put a refrigerator and a freezer in their bedroom. Just the refrigerator just full from top to bottom with Coke, and the ice cream, the top part, the freezer just filled from top to bottom with ice cream, and say, just lock yourself in there, son. See you in a few days. Help yourself. It's like, you're taking some, there's nothing wrong with ice cream. There's nothing wrong with Coke. It's like, but you can't do that. You can't just leave them alone with those things and say, knock yourself out, have a great time. Because they don't know the damage that's happened. That's what we were saying at the beginning, right? Like, teenagers and kids today have been given a really crappy hand of cards to deal with, because they've been given some very desirable toys, and they've been given some very desirable, very accessible diets, and they've been given some very accessible and very desirable and instant gratification behaviors with no rules for the most part. So the way you got to look at it, right, is this. So to answer your question, well, how would you get somebody off a device? Well, the first thing is you got to understand that you can't go to a teenager and say, hey, you're getting 9 out of 10 gratification from that device. I want you to get off that device and do a 3 out of 10 gratification behavior. You're going to get nothing but resistance. So let me give you a good example here, make it crystal clear. It's like when I was, a lot of this stuff, I kind of like, when I was teaching guitar, like a lot of teenage boys, right? That's just the demographic that shows up for guitar lessons. It's like, generally speaking, it's like, it's teenage boys. Like, I don't get into any arguments around that. It's like, that's just what it was. So these guys, I was having amazing results with these students, man, great results. And the parents, like, all the time would come to me and say, I don't know what it is. I don't know what you're doing, Cody, with my son, but it's working. I've never seen him so motivated. Every day he practices, every day he does this. He's like, parents to go, I never thought that they would do this. And I never thought that they would put this amount of dedication. I never thought I'd see this motivation. What you are doing is working. I'm like, oh, thank you very much. I'm just a great teacher. But what it was, like, I tell you what I was doing, it's like, what is going to motivate this child? What is going to motivate a 15-year-old boy? So I tell him, I'd say, hey, look, I'm just going to share with you a simple fact here. The guitar player always gets the best looking girl. Fact.
School of Rock.
It's a fact. Yeah, watch School of Rock. It's like the guitar player always gets the best looking girl. That's that's just the way it goes. It's like, food chain hierarchy. It's like that's the way it is. So there's pain involved in practice. There's pain involved in that repetition, but the pleasure of the goal is greater than the pain of the activity. Whereas most parents would just go, I want you to do a painful activity. I want you to do something that's painful. Well, why would I do that? Because I'm your parent and I tell you to. Okay, well, that's the way to motivate them. It's like now you're going to get like resentment. They might go in their room. They're not going to get good. They're going to resent you. It's just a negative situation. It's like, we've got to understand that the task that we want them to do, the thing that we want them to do, which is practice at this point, right, on guitar, what we're talking about in today's context is get off a social device. There's pain involved in getting off that device. There's pain involved in practice. If we're going to ask them to do something painful, then we've got to replace it with something, or we've got to show them something that will result, that is pleasurable, that is more pleasurable than the pain that they're going to experience. So people go, same concept. Hey, people go, I can't. My son's addicted to video games. You won't get off it for nothing. I'm like, no. If he got a romantic interest, he'd be off that thing in a second. Right? If your 15-year-old son is playing 7 hours of video games a day, all of a sudden got a cute little girl coming around knocking on the door, he would ditch that thing in a heartbeat. He's not addicted to it. He can get off it. What have you presented that is a viable alternative to it? It's like you're saying, hey, that thing that's providing you with entertainment, fun, instant gratification, connection to some extent. I want you just to give it up and go do nothing. Or give it up and go read a book. It's like, are you serious? Are you seriously asking that as a parent? And you wonder what's going on? It's like, no. If you want them to stop doing the behavior, if you want to get them off the devices, then it has to be replaced with something more desirable. What is that? People go, well, that's hard. Yeah, it is hard. Who said child raising was easy? What book tells you it's easy? Yes, it is hard. But it's not nearly as hard as the life your kid's going to have if you don't figure this out. What is that thing for your daughters? I don't know. Could we figure it out? We probably could if we sat down. We could figure out. There's definitely some things that's more desirable than the devices, for sure. Going back to earlier parts of the conversation, we can figure out what feelings they're looking to experience, and we can provide opportunities. But of course, it's hard. But what alternative is there? You seriously telling me that you're going to present them with something less desirable than what they're doing, and you think you're going to get them to do that without a fight? It's not going to happen. So it's just understanding how that stuff works and how the mind works. And when you think about it like that, it's like, why would it be any different? You're not any different as an adult, right?
Yeah, it's all pretty logical and makes complete sense. It's the same as marketing. It's the same. It's the same principle. Yeah. You've got to want something.
Why do you pay tax? It's just the same situation in reverse. Why do you pay tax? Because you love it? No, because the pain of not paying is greater than paying it, right? It's like, it's exactly the same situation in reverse. It's like, it's the pleasure, pain, motivation principle. It's like, well, the pain of not paying it is going to be significantly greater than the pain of paying it. So I'm going to pay it because I want to avoid pain. It's exactly the same concept. We behave in the same way as adults. We have the same psychology, the same motivation, the same instincts as adults. But we just tend to hold ourselves accountable to a lower standard than we hold our children.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. They have a lot of peer pressure as well. Sorry, Thomas, you were gonna say something there. I was just gonna say that they have a lot of peer pressure as well. So that's something else that I've noticed. They kind of they hate one band and then suddenly they love that band because their friends love that band and so on and so forth. So it just goes to show, I guess, how flexible they can be when as you say, if you give them something, and obviously there is motivation to fit into a group. I remember when I went to university, the very first week, the freshers week, it felt like there was this mad scramble because no one knew anybody else. And suddenly you could see everyone was insecure and didn't want to be left out. They're desperate to form new friendship groups. And I guess that's an extension of what it's like to be a teenager. Kind of, that's how I picture it. So I guess it makes sense to me that if you replace the teenager who is sitting there playing video games all day long, I can see how they would stop playing video games if they had a love interest, or if they had some other kind of, if you can give them a goal to work backwards from, perhaps.
Look, I give you like, it's a crazy, silly idea, but it's funny and it's true. It's like, I've got a 5-year-old and he's obsessed with like muscles right now. He wants big muscles. I take cold showers, like, cold showers are great for your health. We don't even need to go into that, but I take cold showers and he's never, ever, ever wanted to get into a cold shower with me. In fact, I think he did it one time and that was it. He's like, no way. And, I just tease him like at night. I'm like, I'm having a shower, EJ, do you want to get in? He's like, is it hot or cold? It's cold. No way. And I was like, the other night I just said, hey, did you know that cold showers will make your muscles grow? He was in that thing like it was going out of fashion, man. It's like every night for a week he had a cold shower with me. Then last night, I had a little bit of a cough yesterday morning, and my wife, last night, EJ goes, I want a cold shower. And my wife said, no, not tonight, EJ. You've had a bit of a cough today. It's not a good idea. He lost it. He lost the plot. He's like, I want a cold shower with daddy. I want a cold. So he went from detesting cold showers to wanting to be in a cold shower every night. Why? Because the outcome that he was looking for was associated with cold showers. Cold showers got nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it, right? It's like, it's the outcome. You associate the activity with the outcome. And it's the same with devices, video games, peer pressure, anything like that. It's like they're associating peer pressure with the outcome. They're associating the device with the outcome. They're associating, they will ditch that device. They will ditch that peer group. Why do people succumb to peer pressure? Because they're afraid that they're going to have their significance removed. Or they're afraid that they're going to have some aspect of their self-worth, self-esteem, self-identity removed. It's like, hey, if you don't comply with the group identity, you will be excluded from this group and you will no longer have an identity. So what's the solution to that? It's like you encourage the child to develop their identity and say, hey, look, if you want to be a part of that peer group, be a part of it. I've got no issue with those bands. I've got no issue with that music. I've got no issue with those people. Be a part of it because you want to be. Don't be a part of it because you've been pressured into it. And it's like, give the child the choice. It's like, hey, if you choose not to be a part of that group, then it's not going to affect your self-esteem. It's not going to affect your confidence. It's not going to affect your self-worth. The outcome that you want up here is not going to be impacted by your, saying, I choose not to participate in this behavior. I choose not to get involved with this. Because honestly, it's like peer pressure is nothing more than mind manipulation and witchcraft, if you ask me.
The crucible.
It's literally trying to control anybody, really, adults as well. Like if you're applying peer pressure to someone, it's mind manipulation and mind control, isn't it? You're trying to control that person's mind. You're effectively trying to put them in slavery. It's like, I would withdraw something that is critical to your existence if you do not comply with my wishes. It's like, it's nothing more than slavery. You're effectively putting that person into slavery. So really important, man. It's like, hey, step number one is like, you have worth because you are you. You are worthy regardless. Your self-worth, your self-esteem, your identity has to come internally, and it is not dependent in any way, shape, or form on your peer group. Peer pressure can only operate when there's a lack of self-identity, self-esteem, self-worth. It's like peer pressure is night and self-esteem is light. Night can't exist in the presence of light. It just can't. It will go away. It will become light, right?
Well, we've gone past the hour mark, and based on your criteria of how good is the guest, there you go. You should take that as feedback, Cody. But,
thank you so much.
I would like to ask, where is the best place for people to find you?
So teensuccess.life is a good place that will direct you. that will direct you to our literature. You can have a look. That should take you to our website as well. So you can check out, we've got loads of stuff. We've got blog posts and all kinds of stuff. We try to put stuff out to educate the world to the best we know how. Give people the tools that they need. And yeah, look, as a parent, it's like I'm really like every day that goes by, I'm getting more and more empathy for parents with teens. It's like I don't yet have a teen, but it's like I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got a three-nager and a 5-year-old going on 20. So yeah, teensuccess.life is a great place to start out. That'll put you in the right direction. That'll get you in touch with our literature, stuff like that.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Well, I've really loved the conversation. I think you've given great value, and I'm sure that the audience will agree. And
thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Yeah, really great ideas there. Some things to definitely take away. And I'm going to have a word with my teenagers, and I'm already planning how I can put some of these things into action. So yeah, you've definitely delivered a lot of really great quality stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, and look, I mean, the main thing is like, I've talked with adults, parents and stuff, and it's like, I ask the question like, well, so what is it that your child really wants? And they're just boom, 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 and just rattle it off. I'm like, stop, you didn't think about that at all. I'm like, that was, you gave it no thought. So that what you answered was the protocols that you're running on currently, which are getting the results that you're getting currently. So rewind. I'm asked the question again. What is it that your kids really want, or what is it your daughter really wants? And don't answer it for 7 days. Don't answer it for a week, or don't answer it for 3 days. At least don't answer it today, because you want, if you're not taking the time to think about it, you're just rerunning current programs, and those programs will get you the same results you're getting. It's like you've got to change the program. You've got to put a new disk in and reboot. And it's like these questions, really, they're not difficult questions. If you think about it, they're not hard questions. It's not like there's nothing profoundly difficult here. It's just like, but it does require thought, which is probably the hardest work known to man. Because generally speaking, we've outsourced our thinking in the world today. We've outsourced our thinking to the news, the newspapers, talking heads, people like you, people like me, whatever. It's like, generally speaking, it's like we've outsourced our thinking. So we're not very good at it for the most part. So it's like, no, just stop for a second, really think about it. And tomorrow you'll have a different answer today. And that's probably closer to the true answer.
Well, that's actually,
but anyway,
go ahead. What are you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, like, send me a copy of this interview. I'll promote it for you to my database as well. But go ahead.
Sounds great. And what I was going to say was, you actually answered a question that was valuable that we didn't ask, which are, with all this information, what should the next steps be? So I appreciate the value add there. And Cody Butler, I'll speak to you soon.
Bless you all. Thank you. And good luck with your kids, guys. We all need it.
Yeah. Take care.
Bless you all. Bye-bye.